What's up YouTube, it's Justin from Team Misplay here. I'm going to be helping you get your game on. Now in this segment I'm going to be talking about your extra deck. Now your extra deck is just as important and sometimes possibly even more important than your main deck because it's what really helps push for game and helps you win and keep your strategy going. Now there are a lot of different extra decks out there. Of course, you know, GBs and Heroes use a lot of fusions, Plant Synchro uses synchros. And now we have the release of the new Xyz monsters, which can be possibly used by a lot of gadgets or anti-meta decks that seem to put out a lot of equal level monsters but don't really have a tuner aside from Gale that they use specifically for their own anti-meta purposes. Now when you're building an extra deck, you really want to focus on getting out themed synchros that assist you in your goal. So for 6 Samurais it would be Xian, or with Gladiator Beasts it could be their contact fusions of Heraklinos, Gazaris, or Asadari. You know, or with Heroes it can be the fusions of Absolute Zero and The Shining. You want to always slot enough spaces for those cards. And then once you move on from that, you want to move into very strong, generic, non-specific synchros or fusions, in the sense that most extra decks run Stardust, Brionac, Catastor, and on the fusion side, Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon for the matches when they go up against machines. Now once you've decided and pared down your extra deck between your necessary themed fusions and synchros and your generic staple fusions and synchros, that's when you realize how much room you have left over to include maybe not so generic or not so themed fusions, synchros, and even tossing in Xyz monsters as well into your extra deck in order to maximize the potential of your deck. So how do you decide? Well, first you want to think about what's the payoff benefit of putting one monster in as opposed to putting in another monster. Can your deck make the monster? Can your deck make the monster consistently? Now, if your deck spits out a lot of high-level monsters consistently, it might be hard for you to, say, put in a level 9 monster that requires 2 or more monsters, 2 or more non-tuners including the tuner monster, you know, or a level 10 monster that includes 2 or more monsters and non-tuners if all your deck spits out is level 4s, level 5s, and level 6s on a consistent basis. You know, and you also want to make sure that once you figure out what you can go in, you know, check and double check and triple check and just see if the monster flows with the synergy of your deck. You know, it never hurts to throw in an Arcanite Magician, but is a 2800 defensive wall, once you've used the counters, going to really be worth advancing your goal? So once you figure that out and once you've allotted your space, the next thing to really realize is, do you have too many copies of a monster? For example, I run plants myself, and when I first ran plants, I had 2 copies of Stardust Dragon, 3 copies of Formula Synchron, and 2 copies of Black Rose Dragon. And then throughout the course of play I found myself reeling, oh, I wish I would have had this synchro monster or that synchro monster. And as I kept playing in tournaments, I took out a copy of Black Rose, and then I took out a copy of Stardust, and then I took out a copy of Formula Synchron, realizing that I really only needed myself personally to maximize my goals and my potential, only lower amounts of copies of each of those cards. So, this has been Justin from Team Misplay. If you have any comments, please leave them down below. Thumbs up, like the video, and subscribe.